Hello, this is Mr. Maurer coming at you live again. This is our learning episode number 3, and I'd just like to update with some things that I've been learning about the Eagles. This time, not so much with the students because we're on spring break, but I have a ton of information that I've been learning from the comment groups. I've been joining some amazing Facebook groups that some people shared some information with, and I'd like to go ahead and share some of that. What you're looking at here is some video footage of our lock and dam here in the Quad Cities. And we brought our fourth graders down here during our class as part of a field trip. What we were trying to do is show them a little bit. We went out eagle hunting. We didn't see any eagles here on the lock and dam at this particular point, but we saw hundreds of the seagulls here looking for food and fish there. And what we think we were trying to tell them, which they got a pretty good kick out of, is the fact that all the fish through the lock and dam, when they hit the rollers, they hit it so hard with the way the water's turning, it knocks them out and stuns them for a little bit. And then these guys just have easy prey with the food because they just knock out, and they swoop down and grab the fish, and away they go. And so the kids had a hard time believing us that actually happened. And what you'll see here in just in a little bit through this clip, you can see there right there, the lock and dam, is one of the fish is actually knocked out right along the edge. So that was pretty interesting. So we took the kids here to the lock and dam, and then just a little bit further down, we crossed Government Bridge to Arsenal Island and looked at some eagles, and you'll see some footage there. And then our fifth graders, we didn't take them to Arsenal. We then took them a little bit further down to Credit Island Park, and we saw a ton of eagles. We saw about 20 that day. And then just Saturday on March 23rd, I took 2 of my kids back down to Credit Island, and we probably saw 30 eagles. And you'll see some pictures here coming up. So there's still a lot of the eagles have not migrated back north yet. The ones that we're seeing around Credit Island and so forth are the ones that typically come from Canada and Minnesota, and they move down south when the water freezes because then they can't get their fish and their food supply. So they come down here, and then when it warms up, they head back. So this is that fish we were talking about right along the edge, and you can see how clean the Mississippi River is. This fish here was knocked out. The kids thought it was dead, but then we started looking at the gills, and you can see his tail starting to move a little bit. He's upside down, and as you watch, he'll eventually come to life here. So we'll show you that, and then you'll see some images of the eagles that we spotted along the way. But what I'd like to share is just a little bit more information about the eggs and the early stages of the eaglets before they do get older. Right now they are a week old, which is very, very exciting. And just some things that we've learned. A lot of this is on the students' independent study projects. But since I didn't get all the video, I'm trying to group in as much as I can and share that here so we always have it. This here is just when you enter Credit Island Park, and so there's a lot of wildlife going on there. But, you know, the eaglets lay anywhere from 1 to 3 eggs. That's called a clutch of eggs. Obviously, one bald eagle can. Actually, that eagle laid 4 eggs, which is extremely rare. Typically lay them about 4 days apart. The eggs are usually about 3 inches long and 2 inches wide. And as we already know, it takes about 35 days for them to hatch. They have a little egg tooth on their beak, which then allows them to crack the shell, which is how they're able to actually break through and get there. When they hatch, they are about 4 inches tall. And as we've already shared in our previous learning episode, they weigh about 3 to 4 ounces. One of the things that we're really starting to be fascinated with the eagles is how much they seem to have like human tendencies. You know, they only hunt during the day, they sleep at night. And on a side note, that was Fort Armstrong on the Arsenal, that building that they just showed there. But they do hunt during the day, they sleep at night, and just the way the parents interact with one another, both the male and female, kind of care for the eaglets, and which we really like to see that. The kids almost treat them like they're people. You know, they get upset if they don't see the father taking care of the stuff. One of the things that we've been really fascinated with lately is their crop, that area where they can store food in their throat. And we actually had a student focus on the entire digestive tract system. So on our Bald Eagle project page, there's a video link. You can hear her whole interview process, and it's really, really fascinating. But they're able to hold up to 2 pounds of food in that crop, which is just amazing to me. 70% of their diet is fish, but we've seen in the nest, and obviously you can see here we've got the rabbit, We had a couple birds and squirrels and things like that in there, but most of their food is fish. And obviously, right by the river, they're able to snag that as needed. They will steal food from others. I don't think it's really much of a need or liberty and justice, but they can do it. And probably one of the coolest things that we haven't seen. There's still a lot of stuff we haven't been able to see. We can't get out all the time in class, but eagles can swim. They're able to, when they dive, they can actually swim in the water, and it mimics or looks like a butterfly stroke. And so, very very fascinating for that. And then we've talked again, but just to reiterate, the female can grow to be about 35 to 37 inches tall. The male 30 to 34. Eagles typically weigh between 8 and 15 pounds, and they usually weigh full weight of 8 pounds, in about 6-7 weeks. These guys are a week old. You can already see how much bigger they've become since they first hatched, which is amazing. They gain about a pound a week, which is kind of crazy. They do live about 15 to 20 years in the wild, so they do get to live a pretty good life there. And then, their wingspans are females 79 to 96 inches. The male can be 72 to 85. We had a student actually have a rope to display how wide their wingspan is, and that really put that into perspective when you really measure out how wide that is. I mean, we say 7 feet and we're like, oh, that's big, but then you really mark that out, it really puts things into perspective. The eaglets will be able to kind of stand on their own feet at around 3 weeks. At about 6 weeks, like I said, they'll be about 8 pounds, and that's when they'll start to grow their own feathers. Right now, in about another week, they'll lose these down feathers, and they'll start to get a darker, grayer coat of feathers, and start that process. A couple other interesting things that we've learned. We're trying to figure out with all that food in the nest. They didn't really do a whole lot with it, so the kids are trying to figure things out as well as myself. They will not toss anything out of the nest for the most part. And they'll continue to use almost as much as they can, and if they don't use it, they'll just build and cover it up. So that part is really really fascinating. And with that, we talked about too how we always notice that the food is always missing its head, and so we were talking with the kids, and obviously they're like, "Well, I just make sure that they're dead." I guess I never really thought of it that way, but it's kind of a keen observation. If you don't have your head, obviously the creature can't be alive. But with fish, they'd eat the head first because you think about it, their scales. And this was shared in the comments. The spines of the fish are oriented backwards, so they can only go down one way. And it seems like such a little fact, but it really gives me appreciation for nature and how amazing nature is. That all these little intricacies flow together to allow things to happen. I mean, the eagles need the fish, they can swallow it down that way. And almost like it's like all these little puzzle pieces fit together. And I just find it so remarkable. The more we learn, I'm starting to realize all these little intricate things that happen in order for these majestic birds to survive. And this would be the case with anything in nature. The other thing, too, is that as we were talking, and just to clarify, this is probably more for the students, and I know there's been a lot of comments and questions about it, of the older eaglet picking on the younger one, and it looks mean, and it looks like the younger one's not going to make it, but rest assured, the young one will be just fine. It's getting the food that it needs, and yes, it looks like he's always getting bullied, or she, but that's just part of nature. The question or thing that I pose to my students that I will when we come back is, well, why do you pick on your brother or sister? You're trying to show dominance. If there was an issue with the scarcity of food, this may be a concern, but obviously looking at the nest, food is not scarce by any means. So it's just a dominant thing that they have to show that he's boss or she's boss. So it looks mean. It's hard to watch sometimes when they pick on one another and the young one's face planted down in the nest, it doesn't move, but it'll be okay. Things will be just fine. So kind of put the mind at ease for the students that watch globally in this project that we're part of, and also maybe for any viewers that get concerned. Rest assured by all the eagleholics, the eaglets will be fine. Moving on from that, and this was kind of interesting, we were raising quail in our classroom. We hatch quail, and now our quail actually laying eggs, and we're looking at releasing the quail. But we can't do that. We can't release them to the wild. We're building a habitat because when they're born and they're in the wild, they walk around the grasses and stuff and form like an oil on their feathers, which helps them be waterproof, and the body will naturally create that oil. But when they're housed in a cage and it's warm and everything else, and it's a perfect ideal environment, they don't develop that knack to create that oil. So now if they go out, they would just freeze to death, like dew would freeze them to death. And so we were looking, and eagles have the same thing. They have an oil gland near their tail, and they'll take that oil and they'll spread it over all their feathers, and that's what helps kind of keep them waterproof. There's this oil that they naturally secrete. So our parallel study with quail continues to show us things, and we're learning stuff about our quail and how to properly get them going and sustaining outside and properly within our courtyard. We see once again another parallel study with birds with the oil piece, which is very, very fascinating. So there we have it. We got just a little bit of time left. I still have a ton of facts to share. If there's things that we need to address or topics that you want us to cover, please let me know. My email information is all over on YouTube and the project page. I thank everybody that shared the information, the links and the websites and all that great stuff. And be doing another one soon because I've just got pages and pages of facts that I'm learning. And this is probably the most learning that I have done in a long time. And these eagles are amazing. And I thank everybody who takes the time to listen and follow along on our project page and help out with keeping track of food and all that great stuff. We're crowdsourcing it all, so the more the merrier, so please feel free to jump in and help us out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. May we pray that the eagles and the eaglets live a healthy, successful life, and we will be in touch soon. Take care, and thanks again for listening, everybody.